Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep Final Mix playthrough. It is time for us to head on to deep space and finish off the second cluster of worlds in Aqua Story. And it means that we are getting very close towards the end of the game now. It is going to continue on a bit longer than it perhaps would do otherwise. In fact, I'm pretty sure that this is the first time that... well, I think it is, I might be completely wrong. As I've said before, it's been a while since I recorded and edited this footage, and it feels like an absolute age since I last did Deep Space in Terra's story and Ven's story, but... basically, I think this is the first time that Deep Space has ended up being cut into two parts, because there's just a whole lot going on in Aqua's visit. A lot of platforming, a lot of battles, a lot of going to and fro, and yeah, it just ended up making sense to split it up, because I think otherwise I would have ended up going ever so slightly a wee bit stir crazy. Because this is like a 30-odd minute part, and that one's like a 38-minute part, so we are going to be spending a considerable amount of time in deep space. I feel like it perhaps should not have taken me as long as it does to get through. It'll probably all begin to make sense as, you know, we progress. Because I'm looking at this and thinking, how the hell did I spend that much time in blooming deep space? But I did. And I have to deal with that. And I don't know why I am seemingly planning on getting rid of Kira, because I don't want to keep Kira. Kind of a very helpful, very useful, very necessary move. That if I got rid of that, that would just be awful. And we're very close to getting the next finish command with Aqua. Just gotta kill more enemies, really. But here we go. Let us begin deep space.
Is there any world they haven't found?
Basically, no. I mean, they haven't actually found 100 Acre Wood, to be fair. But then you haven't really found 100 Acre Wood. You've got the command board, and that's basically a lot. But everything else, yeah, they're there. And they hate you, and they just want to cause destruction everywhere they go. But at this point, we are such an effective fighter that really they do not stand a chance. And you know, since we are just continuing to level up Mickey, fingers crossed in this fight we actually end up getting the full level up on Mickey, and I can then get some use out of his double experience points thing, because that would be nice. And was that it? Yes, it was. Double experience points. Oh, excellent. So now, you know, we just want to get off the finish command, and then that's that all sorted. Once again, really, I should just make use of Mickey's D-Link to get that double experience and just kind of continue and be awesome. But hey, and annoyingly, we're not going to get the best use out of Faith Charge. Although it does help that it's spinning off all those things that do homing attack. It's just we're on completely the wrong level to really make it very effective. But as you can see, we are pretty much owning everything right now. These universes do have more health than pretty much most of the other worlds. You will have noticed that as well anyway, and this was also a really stupid move because those guys are not affected by lightning. So that was a complete and utter waste of my time. But pretty much it's times like when you get to deep space where you realise you probably should level up a bit more than perhaps I have, because it's times like these where you do notice I should probably be doing a little bit more damage, because you effectively want to just be consistently taking off the same amount of health of enemies as you go up. So it sounds like these where you just go, oh, yeah, I'm a little bit behind where I probably should be.
This looks like the Wayfinders. But how did it get here? Tell me, where did you get that?
Come out, you little trog!
Wait!
You there! As Experiment 626 passed through this area.
I don't understand. Experiment what?
Don't be dense. Dr. Jumbo Jukiba's genetic abomination, 626. Small, blue, vicious?
Him? But he didn't look vicious.
Ah, so you have seen him.
Yes, he's in the ventilation system.
Blast! He got away again! Hold it right there. Why don't I know you? What section are you from?
I'm...
Trying to stow away, are we? I said stay close.
What is the meaning of this? Captain Gantu, did I not order you to apprehend the fugitives immediately?
Yes, and I will have them in custody soon. They'd be locked up already if those wretched monsters would just... I mean, if I hadn't uncovered this potential stowaway.
I wasn't trying to sneak on board. My name is Aqua. And those monsters, I followed them here. Please, I can handle this threat. Just give me a chance. Let me show you. The weapon I carry is the only one that can stop them.
Our weapons are of no use against them? Is this true?
Well, we haven't explored all our options.
Nor do we have time to. We are fortunate you are here, Aqua. Your assistance would be most welcome.
But Grand Councilwoman, you can't honestly believe what this stowaway says.
I think you'll find I can. We have a crisis. Jumba and 626 remain at large, and these monsters are obstructing attempts to apprehend them. Or did I mishear your latest excuse as to why you've again failed to carry out your duties, Captain? Will you help us?
Of course. Defeating them is my job. It's what I do best, ma'am.
Then might I make one other request? Should you happen upon our fugitives, please do whatever you can to apprehend them intact.
You want me to capture Dr. Jumba and Experiment 626?
But you can't just... That's my job!
You had your chance, Captain Gantu. Now you will stand down and await orders. We will monitor the location of the monsters and keep you apprised. Thank you for your help, Aqua.
Of course. Experiment 626 was carrying a Wayfinder. I'd note that shape anywhere. Are Terra and Ven here too?
So yes, that is our instigating thing, and this is one of the very few instances where we have just text on the screen from characters. Like, in the original Kingdom Hearts, you had many more of those types of cutscenes, and as the series has progressed, they've become fewer and fewer. And rightfully so, because they have always felt a little bit disjointed to everything else. So it does just make sense to go with more voiced stuff. but it is one of those moments where you're just going, oh, I wasn't quite expecting that. But it's all okay, and it's all fun. But yes, we get to do a lot of exploring of deep space, and get to go to pretty much every area apart from, I think, the engine room, which is where Ven goes for his boss fight. I think that's the only area that Aqua doesn't get to explore in deep space. So there is a lot to do here, and that's probably why it did end up taking me so long. It is also in part because you spend a lot of time backtracking through areas, because you have to go to numerous different key points in order to progress. And also, you've got the whole thing of dealing less damage to the enemies, so battles take longer. That whole shebang tends to make everything last that much longer. And I suppose, whilst we're here, and you know, I've not really got a huge amount to talk about, and we are going to be here for a while, it's probably worth talking about some of the removed content from Birth by Sleep, because there is actually quite a lot of it. I mean, there's been various stuff throughout the entire franchise that's been taken out, but you had a version of the Kingdom King... I can speak. The Kingdom Key D, the Light Seeker, which was set to be an equipable Keyblade for Ven, so the Kingdom Key D is the Kingdom Key of Darkness, so Mickey's Kingdom Key. It can actually still be equipped using a cheat device on the Japanese version. They were also originally going to have the Jungle Buck in the game. It was going to be a playable world, but it was removed most likely, I think, due to rights issues or something along those lines. There was some complication. But you can still access the world through cheat codes, and a number of areas are accessible, including King Louis's throne room. The main reason that I decided to bring this up in Deep Space is because originally Pleakley was going to be in the game in Deep Space, but he was removed for unknown reasons. His model's still in the game's coding, but they never got around to properly texturing it. So clearly they were starting to put him in, but then decided against it partway through the development. Which I feel is a shame, because I think that Pleakley's always been a fun character in the Lilo and Stitch series, and part of the joy is him bouncing off of Dr. Jumbo Chiquita, and it would have been nice to get a hint of that, because while obviously it wouldn't occur in the story of Deep Space because it all takes place before Stitch escapes and during Stitch's escape, so they wouldn't really get their banter going on until after this point. But it would have been nice to see the beginnings of that forming, so that you knew exactly where Stitch's story was going. Oh well, it's just one of those things. You also have certain cutscenes which were altered in the final release. So you can see versions of them in the early trailers, like for Tokyo Game Show and Jump Festa. So you have one, which is where Master Xehanort reveals his plan to forge the Keyblade to Ventus, which originally takes place in Olympus Coliseum for some reason rather than the Keyblade Graveyard. I think that was in part to try and keep the Keyblade Graveyard a little bit secret. There's a few scenes which also were just completely omitted, including one where Terra watches a young Sora and Riku partake in a sword fight, as well as individual lines, like Terra telling Aqua that searching for the right Master Xehanort is after will lead them to him, and another scene where Ventus is at Destiny Islands asking Aqua to erase him. You also have early gameplay demos and trailers showing Terra on the bridge of Enchanted Dominion, while it's covered in thorns, but he never goes during that point, it's only Aqua, and some worlds had areas that were inaccessible to some characters, in the game's final version. So Ventus was seen in the palace courtyard at the Castle of Dreams and Terror, at the cottage in the Dwarf Woodlands. I believe I have also mentioned Aqua's design. So the rear of Aqua's outfit was left ambiguous for some time due to Xenomira being unsure of its finalisation. Until mid-2009 the back was left completely exposed, until the game was officially released, where only the upper back was exposed, mostly due to censorship. Also, in the final version, well, initially Aqua's hair and eyes were a darker shade of blue and lacked the sheen that her final model has, so they've made it a lot brighter for the final version. I think for the better, really, because it just makes her pop a lot more. There is also the whole thing of Laguna Loire, which I believe I have mentioned this story before, but it's worth mentioning again. Originally, the Mirage Arena was meant to have a slight story element to it, and they planned to have Laguna Loire from Final Fantasy VIII as the head of the arena. But because they were planning Dissidia 12 Final Fantasy at the same time, they decided that they could only go with one or the other, and ultimately decided it's better to put him in Dissidia than in Birth by Sleep. And so they just left it. And that's fine. I will also point out that with Aqua's whole design thing, I think they definitely went with the better look in the end, because it makes more sense for Aqua's character to not have so much of her back covered. The initial design was overly sexualized, and that's not Aqua's character at all. So I'm glad that they went where they did. But what's actually quite fascinating is that in Birth by Sleep Final Mix, which was obviously only released in Japan until the collections happened, they had renders for characters for the demo version of Kingdom Hearts 3D in the game data. So you can see the models for Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, Xemnas, Sora, Riku, and Kairi, along with various elements of the demo's logo, which looked very different to what ultimately ended up being the logo, but they were a start. And it does bring up the whole fascinating thing of how games are coded and how they work, because you would think that when you develop a game and there's a bit that's not going to stay anymore, you just get rid of it. That would make sense. There's no point in wasting time on or space on data that's just not going to get used. The issue with that, and it's a thing that I can't remember when I learned that it was a thing, but when the things get coded in, there's always the worry that when you take it out, it'll break something, because what you're working on may inextricably somehow be linked to that piece of data, and it becomes a fine balancing act between do I definitely need to get rid of this because people are only going to get to it if they data mine the disk, or do I take it out, see what breaks and try and fix it. It's all to do with how people do their coding, and it's why sometimes you need particularly gifted coders in order to truly optimise what you're working on. I mean, I will always go back to the story of Satoru Iwata being such a great coder that when he was given the was given Pokemon Gold and Silver to sort of test and look at and work on, he managed to code it so much more successfully that they managed to fit in the entirety of Kanto and have that whole second half to the game in there, which is still one of the most mind-blowing moments in the Pokemon series, and just goes to show how excellent Iwasa was as a coder. I mean, there's also all the stories of him backwards engineering the entirety of the Pokemon battle system by just playing through the original Pokemon games for Pokemon Stadium. There's all the stuff of saving all sorts of other games just by single-handedly doing it himself. And yeah, I mean, Satoru Iwata was an amazing man, and he is still greatly missed in gaming. But it does all tie into that whole thing of sometimes you don't realise how messy coding can be. I mean, really, I don't know the half of it. Pretty much the most extensive I go into code is just basic HTML coding in web content systems. And that's just like strong paragraphs, tables, that sort of thing. The second you start going more complex than that, I start going, this just doesn't make any sense to me, because I've not spent the time to learn how to create code on the fly. So if you ask me to do any CSS work, I'd just be like, no! Give me a bit of code, I might be able to figure out what bit's doing something wrong and where you might be able to put a fix in if you give me the information required in order to say what would need fixing if something was wrong. But actually doing it from scratch, not a in hell's chance. But that's fine, because really these things happen, and we just got a triple Blizzaga, and yeah, the triple magic attacks are amazing, and triple Faraga in particular is one of the best magic attacks in the game, without a shadow of a doubt. And I will definitely be working my way up to that as soon as is humanly possible. And yeah, we are definitely not going to go with Mark of a Hero. That is absolutely useless for Aqua. Magic, magic, all the way, please and thank you. And I have to say, I am beginning to see why it did end up taking so long with Aqua's run of Deep Space. It's because I did the rather stupid thing of accidentally going back the way I had come. Meaning that I have to then go back through this same corridor time and time and time again. And obviously because I'm still not really taking these guys down with, well, as quickly as I would perhaps like, I am making use of the time to get my level ups in. So yeah, we've been through this corridor what feels like 3-4 times now, so I do apologise with that slight element of a little bit wasting your time, but it does fit into my whole mojo of how I do these playthroughs, of trying to show you as much of the core gameplay loop as possible. So if I'm grinding to level up, I will show you most of it. If it gets to the point where, you know, I'm grinding for half an hour to an hour, and that's all I'm doing, yeah, no, there is absolutely no point in me including that in what I'm showing you, because seriously, why? But if it's not too long and it ties into what I'm actually already doing anyway, it just makes sense. And I don't know whether I've actually ended up using the finished command of Diamond Dust yet, because we did only get it in Olympus Coliseum, and I think I've just kept going into all sorts of other command styles, which is good right now because obviously these enemies are resistant to ice attacks, so really there'd be no point in using Diamond Dust properly on them. But fingers crossed we can use it elsewhere. I mean, here would potentially be a good example of a place to make use of it, but it depends. Well, no, there's still the enemies here, but there are more other types of enemies where it will be alright. I have to say, Money Magnet is not my favourite move in the game. It's useful for getting money towards you, but really, why? Like, you can pick up enough money from just killing enemies and selling the pointless commands that you pick up. I mean, if you just do a whole bunch of command boards, really, you're going to be pretty loaded with commands by the end of it. And also just murdering enemies and picking up chests and going to the shop, it's really not that much of a bother. But yes, this is what I needed to do. I needed to activate the transporter to progress, and I didn't realise this. So, oops. You do need to go outside, but you then do need to come back and use the transporter in order to get to the other bits of the ship. And I believe that this takes us to the prison section. And we are going to have a nice, quick, good old fight here, and then obviously more platforming because we're going into the prison section, which, as you know, had all the lifts and the doors and the chests and the so we will be doing that in the next part, obviously, and that is another reason why Aqua's trip to deep space took longer than it probably should have done.
Look out! You must be Experiment 626. I have orders to take you in.
Sarah!
What? I think you and I need to talk. But first things first.
Yeah, I think we need to do some reverse murdering before we have that talk. And yes, we get to fight alongside Stitch, which is amazing and I love it, because Stitch is still like my favourite Disney character ever. Always and forever. And as I think I have also said many times before, Ohana means family, family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten, is one of my life mottos, and all because of Lilo and Stitch. It inspired my first email username, and just in general, I just can't say how much I love Lilo and Stitch. I've said that before, but you know, I just can't not keep repeating it. It's like seriously one of my favourite Disney films of all time. So I will forever love it, and it will always be glorious. And with that fight is done. Aqua might get a little bit of a conversation with Stitch, and then we can head on to the rest of deep space.
Thanks. I owe you. What is it you're looking for? Huh? Wait! I just need to ask you!
Dr. Jumba and Experiment 626 have been sighted. At that time, the two of them were wandering around the launch deck. Would you see that they're secured?
Is Experiment 626 really that dangerous of a creature?
We must assume so.
All right then. I'll head over there now.